That night, Jane lay in bed, staring at Sally, her mind too restless to let her sleep. Bruce's face flashed in her thoughts, his tired smile at dinner, the way he'd avoided her eyes, the phone left on the table. And then the pictures, those pictures, they were etched in her memory now. Bruce sitting close to that woman, her hand on his arm. They left her frozen in time. Every moment replayed like a bad movie. Jane's chest tightens. Was it just a misunderstanding? Could it be incense? She wanted to believe that. But deep down a small voice whispered, "You know what you saw." The next morning, Jane woke up exhausted. She pretended to be fine as Bruce kissed her goodbye. "Don't wait up for me tonight," he said casually, mentioning late hours at the office again. Jane smiled weakly and nodded. Her hands trembled as she locked the door behind him. Once alone, she sat on the couch, staring at her sketchbook. She couldn't focus. Finally, she grabbed Bruce's phone again. This time she searched deeper. It didn't take long to find the message. "I had a great time yesterday. Let's do it again soon. You are the only one who understands me. Can't wait to see you tonight." Her heart dropped. Tonight? So that's what his work late excuser ably meant. Jane's stomach churned as she read the texts. The sender's name, Emily, wasn't familiar. Who is she? Friend? Colleague? Or something much worse? Jane sat frozen, her thoughts spiraling. She needed to know the truth. That evening, Jane parked her car near Bruce's office. She hadn't told him she was coming, of course. She simply wanted to watch. The clock ticked past 7 p.m. 15 at 7:30, Bruce finally emerged. But he wasn't alone. Beside him was a tall, elegant woman with long, dark hair. Emily. The two of them laughed as they walked together. There is, with each other, painfully obvious. Jane's grip on the steering wheel tied in. Her heart raced as she watched them stroll toward a nearby cafe. Keeping a safe distance, Jane followed them. She parked across the street and sat in her car. Washing through the cafe's large windows, Bruce and Emily took a table in the corner. They leaned in clothes, their faces glowing with laughter. Emily reached out at one point, touching Bruce's hand lightly. Jane felt her chest gastric. She wanted to absorb in. The man answered scream. But she didn't instead. She stayed put, watching as the men of love shared what seemed like an intimate moment with someone else. An hour later they left the cafe. Jane's pulse quickened as she followed them again, this time to a nearby hotel. Her stomach dropped when she saw them enter together, their body language casual but unmistakable close. Jane parked and hesitated. Could she really go through with this? Her mind screamed at her to turn back, to spare herself the pain of whatever she might see. But her feet moved on their own. She entered the lobby, her breath shallow, and watched as Bruce and Emily stepped into an elevator. They laughed as the doors closed. Obliviously brought around him, Jane waited for the next elevator and pressed the button. For the same floor. When the doors opened, she stepped into the hallway, her heart pounding. At the end of the corridor, she saw Bruce and Emily entering a room. The door didn't close completely behind them. Jane froze. Part of her wanted to run away, to pretend that wasn't happening. But another part of her, the part that needed answers, pushed her forward. She approached the door, her breath being shaky, and pushed it open slightly. Inside, Bruce and Emily were on the bed. They left her, stopping abruptly when they saw her. "Jane," Bruce whispered, his face draining of color. licked startled, pulling a blanket around herself. Jane stood in the doorway, her body trembling. Tears streamed down her face, but her voice was steady. "I trusted you," she said, her eyes looking into Bruce. "I thought we were happy." Bruce stammered. "Jane, this isn't what it looks like." "Don't lie to me," Jane interrupted, her voice rising. "I saw the message. I saw the photos, and now I see the truth." Emily looked uncomfortable. Avoiding Jane's gaze, Bruce stood, his hands raised as if to call her. "Please just let me explain," he pleaded. "There's nothing to explain," Jane said, her voice breaking. "You've made your choice, Bruce." Jane turned and walked out, her heart shattering with every step. Bruce called after her, but she didn't stop. She took the elevator down, walked to her car, and sat behind the wheel, letting the tears come. By the time she got home, she felt hollow, as if all the light had been drained from her work. She wandered the apartment, their shared memories staring back at her from every corner. Photos of their vacations, gifts they'd exchanged, little notes they'd left for each other. It all felt meaningless now. Finally, she sat at the kitchen table, grabbed a pen, and wrote a note. "Bose, I love you more than anything. I believe in us, but I can't stay with someone who doesn't value me. I deserve better. Goodbye." She placed a note on the table, packed a small bag, and left as she closed the door behind her. A wave of grief overwhelmed her. She let herself cry, her sobs echoing in the empty hallway. But as she stepped into the cold night air, a strange sense of clarity began to emerge. She had faced the truth, no matter how painful. And while it felt like the end of everything, Jane knew it wasn't.